Welcome everyone. This is Sean from Giant Leap, and today I'm joined by Modeo from 0xCurio. So, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, everyone. My name is Modeo. I'm the game designer of Curio, Design Treaty, which is one of the first, I'll say like one of the first games that allows players to integrate their own logic into the game engines. And it's called Treaty because people get to write their own treaties that's enforceable on the engine level with other players. Yeah, so that's the brief introduction.
Yeah, awesome. Definitely, really curious to jump into a bit more about Treaty. But before we get into what you guys are doing at Curio, I want to find out a bit more about you. So, what sort of led you into, let's say, gaming, Web2 gaming in the first place, and then how did you transition into Web3 gaming?
Yeah, so I've been a strategy player since since when I was like very young, strategy game. So I play like games like Civ, Hearts of Iron, and also like aside from this traditional strategy gaming, I also play a lot of Football Manager.
Right.
It's like very intense. I played thousands of hours of that. Like since when I was like very young, and before joining Curio, I've been working in Smarty Lab. So I've been researching a lot of GameFi projects, like such as like we found we basically scouted Steppen at the very beginning,
Right.
and projects like League of Kingdoms, Axis. Like yeah, we've been also doing a lot of research on that. So and then like last summer I joined Curio, because I feel like a lot of those games, I think they left people with the impression that blockchain gaming can only achieve financialization of assets, but I believe that like there's a lot more potential than that. So that's why I joined Curio, want to do something different.
Yeah, fantastic. And how did you guys meet at Curio? Was it just through Web3 channels online that you guys like, hey, look, let's work on a different kind of game, or did you guys know each other?
Yeah, so Yija also went to Berkeley. I went to Berkeley. So yeah, it's a coincidence. Like we were at a like club meetup. It's quite random. So like we just like yeah, we just like found each other and like we talked. And yeah, he actually introduced me to the VC job that I had before. So yeah, but later like we kept in touch. And then like she started this startup, Curio.
Yeah,
So yeah, like we were so I just joined. Yeah,
right.
no brainer.
Berkeley's the ultimate NFT club, isn't it? Like you go there, you meet other people.
Yeah.
Very cool. So you touched upon the financialization of games, and one of the
Yeah.
one of the personal sort of pet peeves of mine is a lot of people are still using GameFi as a way to sort of describe our industry. Here's Maresh. Hey Maresh, you're
Hello,
on
hello.
mute. Hey, this is
Hey,
Modeo from Curio and Maresh, my co-founder. We're just talking about
nice to
how
meet you.
Modeo joined Curio. He's a Berkeley man, and he met his co-founder there as well. So very cool. Actually, before I finish up my question, when you mentioned Football Manager, Modio, is that like those fantasy league kind of games, or is that a different kind of game?
It's a bit different. It's like very like hardcore, like simulation type of game. So like you like as player, like you're like basically like it's simulated like you're the football manager of a soccer team, and you get to like go to the transfer market to make offer to other players from other teams, and then you can negotiate salaries and arrange your own tactics, that kind of thing. So it's like
Right, right.
yeah, very real simulation. Yeah.
Basically, like running a football club in terms of all the business aspect of that's the kind of games that you played when you were a child. You said growing up, these were the kinds of games you were playing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's yeah, it's yeah, I spent so yeah, I thought I wasted so much time on them.
That's not a
But
waste of time.
like
That's like
yeah,
better
at the
than
end of
doing an
the
NBA.
yeah, yeah.
Fantastic. Um, so, before Maresh jumped on, I was just about to ask you, so because of your background and because of the stuff you were doing at was it a VC or a research firm before you joined Curio?
It's a VC, so I was like scouting projects and like yeah, doing due diligence, that kind of thing.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So at that time you were sort of researching other quote unquote actual GameFi projects because that's all there was back then, right? In terms of Web3, if you're talking about, token-based sort of games like Axie and those kinds of things. Is that
Yeah,
when you personally sort of thought, okay, there's got to be something a bit more interesting than this?
yeah, yeah, right. That's yeah. I think no, like still like up until now, like yeah, most people like they still think like GameFi when they talk like when I like talk to people like say I'm doing like blockchain gaming, like they immediately say, is it like what kind of GameFi project are you doing? Like I yeah, like that's until now, like most people still think that way. So yeah.
So what's the term that you sort of try to correct course with? Do you say, oh, no, no, we're doing on-chain games, or we're doing autonomous worlds, or are you trying to coin something yourself at Curio?
Yeah, I'll just say we're building games on blockchain. Blockchain gaming, on-chain gaming, that's like the terms because like GameFi like just symbolically it just means game financialization. That's not the correct characterization of it at all. Like blockchain gaming, autonomous world, on-chain gaming, I think all works. Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, no, and we have the same take as well. Every time an influencer says, "Oh, I'm
Yeah.
so bullish on Web3 and GameFi," I'm like, "What is this, 2021?" It's like, no, no, who's talking about GameFi anymore?
Yeah.
There's so many more other
Yeah.
interesting things to do, right? So at Curio, by the way, congrats on the round recently. That's very good news, and it's very good that
Thank you.
other VCs and bigger firms now are sort of looking more closely at our space. What is the mission at Curio? What are you guys trying to do?
Yeah, so we believe in composability. Believe that the main thing of blockchain gaming in the next coming years is going to be composability rather than like decentralization and stuff. So basically, yeah, we believe that because like writing smart contracts on chain means that and putting the game engine on chain means that like every component of the game is going to be open for players to call upon or to for them to use if when they come across their own logics. And we believe that this will unleash basically another dimension of player creativity. For example, like before, like when I was playing like games like Civ and like Hearts of Iron, I really like them a lot, but like sometimes I feel like just um there's like something that you there's always something that you think are reasonable to have in the game that you cannot have them when playing with other people. And there's like a lot of mods that's built for that purposes. But we believe that there's some inherent disadvantage to like those local mods because like they cannot go globally. We believe that like those kind of mods should also exist um um in a like MMO type of games like a uh basically like globally. So that's what we're trying to do to allow that kind of UGC content uh appear like on a global level, global games.
So
Yeah.
when you say global, do you mean, let's say the Web2 analogies, if I download a mod to play for myself, I'm the only one experiencing that mod, whereas you think it's more interesting if, let's say, the entire game gets to utilize that mod and everyone playing that game gets to utilize. What do you mean by that?
Yes, just to be more specific, for example, like when you're playing Civ, when we're playing Civ, uh, like when you have a mod and you're playing multiplayer games, there's this like you have to like the mod like other players that you're playing with have to have the same mod sets with you.
Mm.
Um, so that's the mod on a local level. Like you have to have those kind of mods, and it's rare before that, for example, players can eject a mod into the global state of the game. Like we're like everyone's get to like play with the logic of the mod that you ejected. It's very rare before previously because yeah, like not because like nothing is truly open. Uh like game engines closed, and we believe that like what we're doing will allow that in the future. And I think there's uh like we basically launched like our game like in Jan like in mid-January, and like there's a lot of people. We also held a on our Discord channel, we held a creative competition. There's a lot of people writing up their own ideas, and we helped them implement it in the first version already. So people actually get to do that in our game. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think the uh that's certainly one of the most interesting aspects, I guess, of on-chain gaming for us as well. It's that what we've been saying is that permissionless extendability of the main game, right? Because obviously we've all grown
Yes,
up,
right.
yeah, grown up playing games, and modding is such a huge part of games, especially I guess RPGs and those kinds of games in particular. And then it's like if you can put that onto the global state, as you say. Do you do you how do you differentiate between composability and interoperability? Because I know there's quite a bit of confusion in terms of, I guess, the more general public about what those two terms are. How do you see those two things playing out in on-chain gaming?
So for me, I think composability means that like yeah, basically like the word, like basically you get to utilize some of the components of the it's like Legos, like you get to like build each of them on top of each other. Like versus interoperability, it's like for example, you have like one NFT characters, you can like move it around to other places, that type of things. Moving across different places, that's interoperable. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's been a bit of a red herring, right, for the community. I know the influencers love talking about, oh, imagine using your skin from this game in another game, and I just don't really see that happening for a multitude of reasons. Not, I mean, the technology might allow you to do it, but that might not necessarily make for a better gameplay experience across both games. Because if you take my, sci-fi sniper rifle into a medieval fantasy game, why would you even do that, for example? Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Right. Yeah, yeah, like I second that. Yeah.
But I think that's largely because I think the general public, even the ones talking about on-chain gaming or blockchain gaming, I would say, most of them refer to 2.5 games, right? In terms of like a Web 2 game with NFT integrations, let's say. And therefore, the only logical use case out of that is what everyone says is, true asset ownership. And therefore, if we want to give more utility to asset ownership, then we should allow it to be used across multiple games. I guess that's where people's natural headspace goes. But I think that's because most people don't appreciate or understand the opportunity of actually having the logic and the rule set on chain, because that opens up a completely different kettle of fish and a different type of game. As an organization now with funding and product, how much do you see your job is to educate people, let's say, or are you guys just focused on releasing products that you think will do the talking for you?
So we are targeting crypto native audience at first. So like with that, I think, yeah, like I think launching product is the most important thing. Like, cause like right now, like there's, like yeah, there was like Dark Forest, but right now, there's not really a game that's um up to the standard yet. So like we think that like there needs to be a product first to speak for itself before we tell people like what, yeah, what why they're special, like why do you need them on beyond chain. So yeah, I think we think product first. So
Yeah. And is Treaty the thing that you guys are going to be continuously building and extending, or are you guys working on a few different projects internally?
yeah, so recently we've been researching a lot of the infrastructure side uh of like for our games. So at the same time we are scoping out more game designs for the next iteration. Yeah, so Treaty is going to be the game we focus on. And there might be some few other like mini games that we will develop, but like that's not certain at the moment yet. Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing that we're starting to realize as well is because of the way the games are built, I'm assuming you guys are using an ECS framework as well to design the games. Is that right?
Uh, what framework?
ECS in terms of
Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah, ECS, yeah, right.
And that makes the game, I guess, easier to extend when and in terms of future ideas, you don't have to just say, okay, let's start from scratch and create a new game. You can always sort of put this and keep adding it to an existing game.
Yeah, right.
So
That's what we've been trying to do. Yeah.
yeah, and that's the way Treaty will go. And I'm guessing once you guys get Treaty up and going, or Treaty is already live, obviously, but once you add these new game modes or features and stuff, you'll allow the community to also pitch in and also change the game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we will need some right now, like if the players want to create their own treaty logics, like they still need to write codes. But yeah, like we like the angle is that like we need to build some tools. And now with ChatGPT, this might be easier. Like, but yeah, in the future, we want people who don't have that much like developer experience to also be able to contribute. Yeah, we want that to happen. Yeah,
Sean, if I may.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Uh,
yeah.
so, in terms of blockchain gaming, on-chain gaming, do you see the future as purely player versus player, or do you see any player versus environment developing as well?
Uh, sorry, could you repeat that? Right.
So, in terms of on-chain gaming, do you see the future of on-chain gaming purely as a one human player versus another human player, player versus player, or do you see any player versus environment like single player games also developing?
Oh, I think it's gonna be a mix of both. Like for our game specifically, PvP is very important and PvE is also very important. Because if it's all about PvP, then like essentially it becomes a zero-sum game.
Hmm.
Like no, because like nobody's gonna win at the end, and we need some, yeah, we need some PvE elements in the type of game we are making. Um,
Yeah, because one of the key issues of blockchain, which at least we have faced consistently, is how do you solve for NPC logic and background process updates. I have seen that you guys are working on ticking so that
mhm.
the block by block thing is updated. One of the and we have looked at ticking as well. And one of the key concerns I have with ticking, and maybe you can educate me on this, is as the game sort of the number of uh, entities in the game increase to a large amount and the number of background processes update increase, would that be too hard to handle using ticking, or you don't see an issue, or you guys have other thoughts processes around that?
Um, okay, so I probably I'm not able to elaborate on the engineering detail
That's fine.
because our engineering team on this. I'm not in the like I'm not like actively contributing to it right now, but like
That's fine. That's fine.
I think as of now, uh we think that like we think that it's um the performance it can hit is gonna be like magnitude different, like higher than like what we had previously before, and that's like the reason why we shifted from like ECS in smart contracts to right now like so basically we're using precompile to try to
Mm,
achieve that. Yeah.
mm. Okay, cool.
Um, yeah, I think in terms of the, I mean, I don't want to ask too many questions about the engineering side, but obviously there are a lot of infrastructure challenges ahead of for all of us, right? In terms of trying to build games that work and scale in terms of the number of people that that can play on them. So, I think initially everyone was like, okay, maybe an L2 will work, but then we're sort of realizing that a general purpose L2 is not even going to be enough for what we want to do. So I think more and more people will start to move to dedicated chains, and those dedicated chains will also need specialized things, right, for on-chain gaming. Is that what you see happening as well?
Yeah, I think right now it's too early to say. Yeah, because right now, like I think if like like what we can see now is that like if it's just like the current L2 infrastructure, it's not gonna work out for um like a real game. Like so we can see like there's like two routes that people are going with. One route, people are trying to like make the game super simple, to cater for the current limitation of blockchain. And there's also another way, that might also be practical, like to innovate upon the infrastructure. So I think right now it's too early to say like what it's gonna be like. Yeah, we will have to see. Yeah.
I think are you familiar with the Lattice, the mud guys from 0x Park?
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah.
Skyscrape, I was speaking to one of the guys the other day, and they had this concept where within the game they almost have these two modes, right? Where one is that kind of slower, more simple settlement mode, and another one is kind of like the equivalent of if you did dungeon raids in another game, where it was more high fidelity and faster. But that state, for example, isn't persistent potentially, but then once you take your loot out, you can kind of settle in the game in a different type of game mode. I thought that was quite an interesting sort of way to sort of move around with the limitations that we have. What do you think of that kind of take?
Um, so like two types of games. You mean like yeah, I know Sky Strife. Yeah, I've checked that out. What's the other game you say? Like
So it's still Skystrafe as well, but they have that a different kind of game mode layer where that's where you sort of export, I guess, your loot to, and it kind of stays in that persistent state, and that world is a bit more slower moving, whereas, the actual battles are kind of individualized game modes that they have. So it's kind of like having a faster paced, more fluid game, but that doesn't last. It's not a
hmm
persistent world, but then things can move from that world into a more persistent world as a way to sort of manage potential throughput things that they need to store.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a practical approach. Yeah, that's also like how like traditionally how games is done. Like for example, like in games like Rise of Kingdom, there's like a lot of mini games inside the game, and the world like the macro or the meta world like often much doesn't change that often, like that frequently.
Mm.
It's always the mini games that have the um like that's like really fast and like change like second by seconds, and versus like meta games something it doesn't have to change like that frequently. I think yeah, that's definitely a practical approach. Yeah.
Sure. And in terms of your role, obviously you're the game designer. How do you sort of, I guess, everybody? Okay, so this is something that I want to ask because it's an interesting phenomenon that we have in the team as well. It's between myself and Maresh, a lot of my ideas, because I play a lot of Web 2 games, and I'm not as technical as Maresh. Maresh is definitely the um, engineering lead. A lot of my ideas just can't be built yet, right? or can't be done. How do you guys manage what you want to do from a game design perspective with what's possible in terms of the infrastructure?
Um. So yeah, right now, mm, yeah. So previously, like yeah, we have to work like yeah, there's a lot of like limitation to what we can do. But because of that, like at the beginning, we've decided that we are building a strategy game instead of like a RTS type of game. Like we are building a 4x strategy game, like in Rise of Kingdom. So like actually, in fact, like the performance, I don't think is as um yeah, I don't think it requires that much like from like um from the infrastructure. Like for example, like previously uh for an army to move from this place to other place, like we use lazy update. That's possible to do. Um and sometimes uh for example, like in our last launch, um like the battle could last like because of the network, because of the throughput, sometimes like a battle may takes like a few minutes versus when it's designed to last only like for example like a few seconds. In that kind of scenario, for example we sometimes like for example tune parameters to make the battle go faster. That's some kind of adjustment we've been trying to make, but I believe that for the next iteration, I think a lot of this problem can be solved with our newest infrastructure. So right now we're just designing the game uh around like how a normal 4x game will be made. So yeah.
So it's like a bit of an arms race, I guess, between game design and what the infrastructure allows you to do. And obviously, infrastructure side will get better over time, which will allow all of us building an on-chain gaming to move more and more like a more Web 2 UX for players. Is that what you see happening?
Yes, absolutely. I think like for games from just specifically for games, I think we definitely need to have better infrastructure to make games that's more fun. Because right now it's if you have to wait for the attack to occur like every like for like 5 minutes for each attack, that's just not fun. Like you don't get this like immediate feedback loop, which is very common uh in Web2 games.
Absolutely. Now, touching on UX, obviously a huge issue. Not as big if we're targeting Web3 native people initially, but obviously we all want to target beyond Web3 people, right? Because there's not that many of us in the first place, and far more gamers in the world. Have you guys given some thought as to like when you do start to target more and more non-Web3 native players, um, what that onboarding would look like, or is that still a little bit off for you guys?
Um, yeah, so I think right now it's not like it's it's not the most important task for us right now. I think onboarding like new users will be the next step after we launch the alpha game. And yeah, that's the plan. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, because we're having kind of conversations around. Firstly, even within Web3, there are different levels of uh, comfort, right, in terms of doing different kinds of games. Like Maresh and I, we came from DeFi before this, and we figured out very quickly that just because you have NFTs doesn't mean you necessarily know how to use DeFi dApps or anything, a bit more sophisticated. So even within Web3, there's like the NFT guys that know a little bit. They might know how to use OpenSea and check their MetaMask, but that's kind of about it compared to what we used to do in DeFi and permissions and those kinds of things. So um, that's an interesting thing for us in terms of user acquisition and who we put the game in front of initially, and then their feedback, for example, becomes you have to kind of manage that because just because they're in Web3, it also doesn't mean they're familiar with playing on-chain games and can understand the limitations as well in terms of what you're putting in front of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Yeah, sometimes uh yeah, but like we've encountered that like before and had the same thoughts as you. Yeah.
In terms
Yeah.
of, I don't know if you saw on the timeline recently, but there was a lot of chatter around cheating in obviously all kinds of games being a problem, but in particular, um, starting to see some voices to say it's going to be particularly bad, obviously if there are financial things tied to games, right? In terms of, I think it was around, what's that new extraction game that's being built by an influencer? I think it's Dead Drop, maybe Dead Drop. It's a Web 2.5 game, but it's like an extraction shooter
Mm-hmm.
where they have NFTs, and people were saying, oh, if you're trying to move a package around that's actually worth, $100,000, definitely people will try to use bots or any kind of advantage, right, to win that kind of game. When it comes to bots
Hmm.
and on-chain gaming, obviously that is a huge consideration of ours. What's your thinking around cheating? Is it something that can be managed? How do you sort of manage for something like that?
Yeah, yeah, like I get asked about this question a lot. I think just like quite frankly speaking, I don't think it's gonna get managed. Like it's just not gonna happen if like all the like if the chain is full if the game is fully on chain. Like even if you block the front end, like they can still access it from by calling the smart contracts.
Hmm.
So I think games in the future should just by default, you need to know that like there's gonna be bots uh that's playing rather than players. There's probably gonna be like 80% of bots versus and 20% of players. I think that's gonna be common. At least like for the space of fully on-chain games. It's gonna be like that. And designers should work around to find a solution to that instead of like just like trying to block the bots because that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, I don't think it's not possible to block the bots. You could do that to some extent in Web2 games, but definitely not in on-chain games like you say. So from a design
Yeah.
perspective, what are some things? Because obviously bots are one thing, and them extracting value from the game is obviously a big issue. But the other big issue is that if they start to impact the game, that makes it not fun for human players, right? Then you're going to start to lose that base of players. How do you design for that? Have you given that any thought?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things we can do. So like for example, in our game, so we are thinking of the game is gonna be like alliance-based game. So like it's not like just simply just PvP, it's gonna be alliance versus alliance. So if you're just a player like with a lot of bots, but not enough resources, and you're not gonna be able to win against alliance. So coordination is very important, and bots is not good at that. Human coordination is, I think, has an edge over that, over the bots. And secondly, there's also a tool that, for example, like we can design around for example, like let's say there's a um let's say you have NFT characters, and every day, like previously, if you don't design specifically for um to prevent bots from taking advantage of the game, uh, you probably would allow the NFT characters to be able to like collect resources unlimited, unrestrictedly, like every day. But like if you want to if you want the game to be fair, you probably want to design like a cap to like how much an NFT gets to collect. So this way, like there's no real difference between a bot and the players. Because like one of the biggest advantage of bots is that it can be online like 24/7, uh, versus humans cannot do that. But if we keep the bar low, we keep the cap low, then I think it solves part of the problem as well. So I think these are the two great tools to alleviate the problem. Yeah.
Sure, I think that's definitely a sound way to think about it. So what you're basically saying is, how do you put in game mechanics where human organization needs to give you or does give you some sort of distinct advantage but basically, how do you put things in the game that humans are inherently better at and bots are
Yeah.
inherently not good at, and then also put in restrictions so that bots don't have advantages where they do normally have advantages, such as being online 24/7. If it doesn't make a difference because you can only do something for, let's say, an hour in the game a day, then that helps to balance it out. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, right. That's yeah.
I mean, that those are sound approaches, but I think they're also very uh, difficult, right, to implement correctly, especially around the human organization thing, because I think we can all agree that doing any kind of game loop that is fun is already very hard, right? In terms of even just a Web 2 game. That's what all game designers want. They want to create that fun game loop. Then you add in all these other things, right? Where a small mistake could mean that the entire game is drained of fun or drained of its resources. That's quite a tricky thing to sort of try and manage. What do you think is the best approach to implementing these things? Is it just to try things and see if they work and then adjust them over time? Or, for example, our approach right now is to try not to make it as easy to financialize the game because I think that changes the focus of why people might play, right? Like, we're not going to have an NFT marketplace from day one. We're not going to have the ability to take out, right now everything is kind of an in-game balance. Sure, it can be still tokenized, but it's not made easier. Do you know what I mean? Because we want people to focus on playing on the game itself rather than thinking about, oh, how do I extract all of my credits from the game so I can take it to an AMM and try and sell it for 30 cents or something like that. Um, what's your approach in terms of trying to manage that type of gameplay?
Um, yeah, so I've been recently also researching about this, like the game economy side. So I think one of the so we are friends with the Citadel game. I don't know if you heard of it.
Yeah, we've
I
heard of the
think they are
Citadel. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think they provide a great example like to like how like on-chain games can like manage their game economy. So I think uh like yeah, sure. Like there's like we can sort of like block people from like profiting from the games, but like there's also approach that we turn that kind of opportunities into a part of the game mechanics. For example, I think what like an example they have is uh like they have this auction mechanics in the game. So basically, like every week, there's gonna be an auction for new ships, and if you win the auction, it's gonna be a loot box where you get a chance to uh get rarer ships versus you just purchase from OpenSea, and then uh, players who win the bids can like they're incentivized to flip the NFT by selling them again on OpenSea if they happen to get the rarer ships. And I think these kind of mechanics, because like we are targeting the crypto native audience at first, I think these type of mechanics, it's fun in itself. If you balance that well, don't let it become the center of the gameplay, but having those kind of mechanics for players to who are degens to play with, I think that's also important. And also, another important reason to have those mechanics is that they can help you balance the game economy pretty conveniently. Uh, for example, I'll just use Citadel game as the example again. For example, in their auction mechanics, uh, like they have a system that monitor the game economy in real time, and whenever they found out that for example like this the ship supply is too high, then they might lower the supply during the auction to let them so that there's like lower uh minting of ships into the game space. So it's also a great tool to balance game economy for studios. I think, yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And by the way, I'd love to speak to the Citadel guys as well. If you guys are close to them and could swing an intro sometime, that would be fantastic. Um,
Yeah, sure.
yeah, but they're certainly very interesting because one of the things that I know we didn't want to. I think most of us building in the on-chain space are on the same page. On-chain gaming space, I should say, are on the same page that the financialization. Uh, that we used to have in terms of like actual GameFi games from back in the day. That's not as interesting as what we're doing, and that's not the main focus. But one of the inherent benefits of being on chain is obviously that native commerce that comes with it, right? In terms of tokens and NFTs and the infrastructure that supports that already is obviously quite robust. So you do have to take advantage of that, especially if your first audience are these crypto native people. What's interesting to me is in our industry and the people that we're targeting at the moment, 99% of them want to trade, right? Whereas if you go to Web 2, the vast minority of people actually trade and buy gold for World of Warcraft or farm or do these kinds of things, right? And I think that's okay because they don't affect the main gameplay. They're not a big enough majority of gamers where most people are just playing for enjoyment, and then there are people who try to grind and extract and do these kinds of things. Um, Whereas we
Hmm.
have that complete opposite sort of problem. So, is what you're saying the approach is to um, have things that can satisfy that player base, but sort of still try to steer them away from it's more than just financialization. There's a fun game here as well that you guys can play.
Yeah, yeah, I think absolutely. And I think yeah, they can go hand in hand, I think sometimes if like we manage to design it well. Um, because yeah, in a lot of Web2 games, like cases like that happen to like for example, like players happen to get a rare items in a loot box and then they sometimes just sell it instead of just like using it themselves. I think that that's also quite common in Web2 spaces. Yeah.
Um, how do you avoid, and I'm just using Axie as an example because that was the best example.
Mhm.
How do you avoid a situation where there's, let's say, um, the rise of asset prices get to the point where, let's say the game becomes very popular and which is what everybody wants. Um, how do you sort of, I think a lot of the reason people get upset at projects, no matter what project it is, but especially in crypto, is that they they buy the top, right, and then they get burnt when things inevitably come down because things aren't sustainable. Um, Obviously, happened with Axie, happened with Stepin, happened with a whole bunch of projects. But like, how do you stop that run up? How do you separate the success of the game with, let's say, the in-game assets in your mind?
Um, so I think we believe that like uh the key to mass adoption is definitely not to have a such a high bar. Like for example, you have to pay like 10 ETH to play the game. That shouldn't be the case if you want a successful game. Uh like for ma for more people. So I believe that games that we've been studying, for example, like a Rise of Kingdom and some like other mobile 4X games like Clash of Kings, those type of games provide some great examples to how to balance this situation. For example, in their games, like on one server, there could be players uh, actually paying millions of dollars to win the game, and there's also players who's spending nothing and playing the game on the same map. And I think they really did a good job into balancing two groups of people. And I think I see the future of uh I see the future like at least like for the genre for the type of game that we are making, lying that direction. So like there's gonna be two group of people. One group of people like owning like high value assets and another group of people enjoying the game and maybe they can also earn some profits by playing the game. Yeah.
So do you think play to earn is still going to live on in some capacity, or do you think that needs to change?
I think it just by nature it's gonna happen. Like in like yeah, I think it's gonna happen. But I think what should be different is that the game should not be designed around pay to earn. Uh, like players should be able to find the opportunity themselves versus like the designer creating those opportunity for people to take advantage of. Um,
Right. And,
yeah.
and so that is to mean that the majority of people can't be trying to play to earn, right? Because obviously that is not a sustainable model and never works out. But if a few people get very good at the game, let's say the elite, 1, 2, whatever percent of people find a way to make money out of the game, then that is still going to happen.
Yeah, I think that's still gonna happen. It's not, yeah, like especially when like all the assets are on chain. That's just, yeah, I think it's unstoppable. Like if you want to prevent like everything, like every play to earn behavior from happening, that's impossible to do, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously there are different types of play to earn, right? Like you said, if everybody comes in and everyone's making money every day by playing the game, that money needs to come from somewhere, right? Obviously that's why it was never a sustainable model. Whereas if you're just talking about if you get very good at the game and you have the most rare loot and then you can sell that loot to earn some money, that's a different kind of play to earn. That's more like you're playing the game and you're very good at the game and you get rewarded and
Yeah,
then you can turn that into some money. That's different, right? Whereas if, if they sort of counted the hours and money they put into the game in the first place, they're probably not earning that much.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's,
Uh,
yeah, right. I 100%.
I've been listening in the background. So that's an interesting take because we have heard different things on this topic. As game designers, do you think we should, as game designers, do you think we should design the economics of this player economy or prioritize the design of the fun aspect of the game and let the economy emerge organically and let it take any shape whatever it can take, or should we actively account for the fact that okay, there is going to be trading, how do we optimize for it, etc., or not worry about it all and focus completely on the fun aspect of the game? Would be curious to
Um,
understand what your take is.
yeah, yeah, that's a good question. I really think that like at least like for us, for me, like I'm designing the game economy and game mechanics like in the same document basically. I think like for you guys are also building like strategy game, right? Like it's
More like an
like
RTS.
RTS, yeah,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah. For I think for those type of game, like game economies is also very important pillar to the fun of the game. Like if the economy is not working, um, players will feel like the game is not balanced, and they're not gonna be happy about it. I think yeah, like the for the type of game we are making, I think game economy is equivalent to, if not more, in terms of its importance to how fun the game is. Um, yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, I guess it makes sense in terms of strategy games, 4X games. The crux of the game is to manage resources, right? Basically, manage
Yeah.
resources and logistics. So, uh, the game itself is an economy game. So I guess if you're creating mechanics for that, then the game economy has to be balanced, right? Uh, which is I think a little bit different from, let's say, I mean, no one's building an FPS at the moment because the technology doesn't allow for it, but let's say one day we get to FPSs that are on chain. The game
Hmm.
economy there is less important, right? And therefore there could be potentially some more separation. But I think because of the nature of the tech, and the nature of the types of games that are being built, it's predominantly strategy games right now because that's what's the best fit. We've all come to the conclusion for the time being, whether they're real time, turn based, or 4X. Uh, the economy certainly is something that needs to be managed. Just because the game itself wouldn't be fun without a balanced economy.
Yeah. Uh, that's true. Right. Yeah. I think yeah, even for like first person shooting games, like there's also like a lot of there's also a lot of economic elements like for the meta games. Um yeah, like for example, like how yeah, I think it's like in for example, if you play CS:GO, like I think it's very self-evident. Like
Mm-mm.
there's like huge markets there, and these designer have to design them well. Um, or otherwise, like if you yeah, or otherwise like it's just not gonna be fun. Like for example, you like by by chance you get a rare item in the game, and suddenly it become not rare anymore because the economy doesn't do its job.
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. If you start each match with your primary, loadout with everything that you need just because you bought the NFTs, it's not going to be fun
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
game basically, right? Because you're kind of breaking the game from that day one. So um, no,
yeah.
it's certainly very interesting space that we work in, and obviously we've all got a lot of figuring out to do. I'm certainly excited to see what you guys continue to do at Treaty, and look forward to jumping on some of the playtests that are coming up as well. We'd love to have you guys participate in our playtest too. So I'll send you an invite for the next ones. We're creating some tutorials because we find that will hopefully get people up to speed around the mechanics of the game um, faster. So we'll share that with you when we're done.
Nice. Yeah, yeah. I've been planning to play your games. When's the next playtest?
Hopefully, I mean, the game is ready, and we can run another playtest any time. But we're doing these tutorials first, I think, because that way people get up to speed, and then when they join the actual session, they can just sort of go and actually play a match. Whereas we've been finding people jumping into matches and kind of spending an hour learning how to play the game. So we'll let you know when that's done. That should hopefully be done in, I don't know, fingers crossed, a week or so, and then we'll have a play test for the actual tutorial campaigns.
Yeah, 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 sure. Thanks for inviting me. Yeah, also appreciate what you guys are doing. This is really great. I think yeah, like there's a lot of people building fun stuff. I think, yeah, this space is getting um more interesting. Um,
There's not too many of us, but there's certainly more than was a year ago. Definitely, you guys were certainly very early on in the
yeah,
journey. But yeah, it's a great little, I think, community. I'm enjoying talking to everyone and playing everyone's games. I think it's you can still count the number of on-chain projects in two hands at the moment, so that's pretty cool.
yeah, that's true. But it's growing. Yeah,
It's growing, absolutely. Um, awesome, Modeo. It was really great to chat. Thank you for taking some time out of your Sunday to jump on an episode with us. Yeah, let's keep in touch and keep building cool games together.
yeah. Thank you. See ya.
Thanks so much.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks.